Hi, welcome back to the Spirit's Path. This is Dee, and today's tarot card of the day out of the Wildwood Tarot deck is the Life Lessons card of the Journey. And with the raven eating, the little bit of meat that's left on that elk, it's a time for transformation. It's a time for a cyclical change, all right? And we talked about that yesterday with that Queen of Arrows and the Swan, how she likes to move from, pond to pond to pond. All right, and she's giving you a heads up saying, hey, this is the way you need to go, right? You need to change what's happening, okay? Because over the last couple days, I don't want to say you feel comfortable, but you've had all these court cards there, giving you advice and mentorship. But now it's time to take everything that they've been telling you and put it into action, okay? And this card isn't to be feared. It's to be looked at and say, you know what? I need to transform. I need to move into a direction where something old is dying off, okay, and something new is giving me life, okay? That passion. And that king of bows is still down there. He's saying, where do you need to take charge? You need to take charge of your path, moving forward. And the universe has got you protected, okay? And you're following in the footsteps of tradition. Those that have passed on, but the dead are talking to you. Okay, is it Seven of Vessels? That morning card is still down there. Don't fear the messages coming from the other side, because the ravens watch over those souls that have fallen. Especially those that are fallen in battle. They're also guardians of the dead. And this guide, this raven, he's got the all-seeing eye. So he can see everything that's going on out there. Okay, the key point of this card is do not fear change. Fear again is false evidence appearing real. Don't fear the change in that relationship. Don't fear the change in that work situation. Don't fear the change in that social dynamic, right? Because once you start fearing that stuff, it just brings your vibration down. And there's a lot going on here that's positive. There's nothing down here that's negative. Okay, you're moving from pool to pool to pool, and in this instance, on your spiritual path, you're moving to a different level on your spiritual path as you're moving forward. And it's a time of realignment. You might have to look at yourself and say, you know what? Maybe I need to do something different in my relationships. Because I keep looking at the relationships and they're not, they always, they don't go right. I always choose the same type of person, whether it's a guy or a gal. I always look at this aspect of it. Maybe it's time to take a step back and look within. What's the common denominator? Is it them or is it you, right? And maybe there's something you need to change within yourself. The way you look at the relationship, the way you go about it, and maybe instead of giving so much, maybe it's time to step back. Instead of chasing, let them chase you for a little bit. That time of realignment in that aspect. Even at work, you can look at the realignment, saying, you know what, I'd like to move to a different department. Learn something different. Okay, and people look at you going, why don't you just stay where you're at? You're good at where you're at. It's not about being good where you're at. It's about growing. It's about gaining more wisdom, more knowledge, right? But in order to do that, the old must die off first, right? The old attitude, whether it's in a relationship or at work, the old attitude and your spiritual beliefs, it's time to change, right? And with the the stars in the sky moving to where they are, there's a lot of change going on, slow moving change. So, guess what? Embrace it, because it's going to happen. All right. And you have to be willing to, to take that change. You can't step in the same river twice, because it's always flowing. There's change there. You're changing as a human being right now as I speak. The cells in your body, right? They're dying and they're growing. They're dying and they're growing. Okay. And, that new growth can be, can be renewed. It can be a reminder of, how we're moving forward, so celebrate and acknowledge the passing of something dead. And that could be part of that Six of Vessels, that reunion. I talked during the Seven of Vessels morning here a couple days ago that, when my mom passed away, right? You acknowledge the passing and, something that's moved on to the other side. But it's not a sad it's not sadness. I'm grateful, and I celebrate, with that celebration of life that she had. Right? And she gave me so much wisdom, so much knowledge when I spent the last couple of years with her. And, a lot of that, now I just sit back and I look at it and I just rejoice. Because the patient attitude, the calmness that we had, allowed me to grow and allowed her to move on to another form. All right? And, so letting go of the past, and it's hard. When somebody has passed on, it's hard to let go. But you don't have to, let go of who they were. You can hold them in your heart. You can hold them in your memories, right? That keeps them alive, on this plane, right? You can look at the old pictures and, have flashbacks of, birthday parties and stuff like that. That just allows you to, understand where they're at. But the physical being, gone. Okay? Anything that's a physical trait that's still around, I'm still going through stuff, from her estate. And, some stuff hasn't been touched in 4 years and probably longer than that. And guess what? Out to the curb it goes. Right? So it's just that new opportunity to grow, because once you, and the stuff that I got out on the curb, once it gets out there, okay, I can put new stuff into that area where it came from, right? And just look at it and just say, out with the old, in with the new. It's a better storage place for this. Or, hey, I'm going to make it into, a room or whatever, and fix it up. But at the same time, it's being patient with the process. It's, being calm with that new opportunity. And just looking at things from a different perspective. So, the journey continues on. Life continues on. Death continues on. All right? It's a circle. Where are you at in that circle? Are you going to, be in that relationship that's not feeding you? Are you going to be in that career that's not, I don't want to say supporting you, but it's not fulfilling, right? If you want to do something different on your spiritual path, in a relationship or in a career, with your finances, you need to put some of those old past paradigms away. Let them go and embrace new paradigms. Because what worked in the 1960s and 1970s, okay, doesn't work now in the 2020s and going into the 2030s. Different ways of thinking. You think about it, that's 60 years old, right? Look how far we've come in 60 years. I remember when I was going to school, there were no computers, okay? Nobody had a cell phone in their pocket. Look where we're at now. Technology changes. It doesn't, out with the old, in with the new. You see it with all the phones, right? Every year, hey, we got a new one. And what do people do? They go buy the new one. Even though the old one's still okay. Guess what? Out with the old, in with the new. Out with death, in with life. It's cyclical in everything you look at. So that's today's card of the day. The Journey out of the Wildwood Tarot deck. Hit that like button for me. Subscribe to the channel. Share with others. Give me a thumbs up. Check out that link down below if you'd like a reading. It's in the description box. And this is D for Spirit's Path. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Take care. God bless. And stay safe, everybody.